Yamada is the most beautiful, thick girl in his class. As lunchtime begins, Ikikawa goes to the library. When he opens the door, he sees Yamada sitting at a table eating rice balls. Ikikawa walks by Yamada quietly and he's a bit surprised when she talks to him while eating. Not fully grasping what she's saying, he says yes and continues into the library. He hides behind a bookshelf and watches Yamada. He watches her down a bag of chips. Yamada starts munching on potato chips. While eating, she hums and taps the table. Ikikawa finds it weird and starts planning to murder her there. Then, she starts working on a project, but forgot her box cutter and starts tearing the paper with hands. Ikikawa hates watching this and instead offers her his own cutter. She thanks him, and he goes back behind the bookshelf and blushes. After finishing, she accidentally puts his cutter in her own pencil case and leaves. Yamada runs into one of her friends, who scolds her for her snacking habits. She runs back to Ikikawa and gives him the packet. He initially thinks she's giving him her leftovers, but she finishes the chips and hands him the packet to throw away. The next day, Ikikawa enters class thinking about his box cutter. He sees it on his desk and realizes it feels warm. He wonders if Yamada had held it on her way there. He's surprised that she knew his desk. Later, he hears that her group completely redid her poster from yesterday since it looked messy. This angers him because he knows Yamada worked hard on that poster. Right then, their social studies teacher announces it's time for group project presentations. When Yamada's group presents, he notices that she looks extremely sad. When he goes up to present, he saw that Yamada even starts crying because her work had to be redone by her group mates. Yamada is sitting by the window when a helicopter passes from there and everyone looks in her direction. Ikikawa tears up his project using his cutter so no one will notice her crying. Awkwardly, he diverts everybody's attention away from Yamada. His group partners scold him while Yamada asks her friend about the helicopter, proving he did it all for nothing. Later on, he sees Yamada and her friends having fun and getting touchy with each other. He overhears one of his classmates discussing his dirty thoughts about Yamada, which angers him a lot. His classmate, Kenta, reveals he's into a girl named Hara, who is plumper than the other girls. Later, when Ikikawa is at the library and sees Yamada, Hara enters too because Kenta wanted to meet her. Kenta arrives, and Ikikawa wonders if he'll ask Hara out. She and Kento are conversing with each other and bushing. Yamada is just sitting and looking at them, but soon she realizes she shouldn't be here. Just then, Ikikawa accidentally drops a book Yamada overhears and signals him to act like a cat. But he meowed very poorly. Yamada goes in the back to show him how to make a cat noise. The two having a meow fight. Hara says it sounds like two cats fighting and they both starts laughing. On his way home, Ikikawa sees a magazine shop and remembers about Yamada's modeling job. He gets curious about the magazine she's in, so later he enters inside the store. He sees Yamada in casual clothes and quickly hides behind a shelf. She was trying to catch attention, but ends up making them leave. Realizing her efforts haven't paid off and she leaves feeling down, Ikikawa decides to buy one of her magazines to make up for any customers she might have scared away. At home, he looks at the magazine and notices that she's unrecognizable in the photographs. He gets a bit mad at himself for being kind and supporting towards Yamada, after he wanted to kill her, and throws it in dustbin. He rethinks and takes it back, realizing it's wasteful to throw it after purchasing it. The next day, he sees Yamada on her way to school, dealing with a guy who's trying to flirt with her. The guy keeps asking for her contact, but she refuses to give him. The situation takes a darker turn. He holds her wrist and becomes more insistent, stopping her forcefully. Feeling distressed, Yamada says, "Okay, fine." Ikikawa watches this but tells himself he doesn't care. Eventually, he closes his eyes and in frustration pushes his bicycle down a hill. It ends up falling into the water below a dock. Yamada's friend saw this and tells Yamada, who manages to distance herself from the guy bothering her. Yamada asks Ikikawa about his bike and he awkwardly explains that he accidentally pressed the gas instead of the brake. Yamada laughs at this, telling Ikikawa he's funny. Later in the library, Ikikawa hides behind the bookshelves and watches Yamada. He knows that she is the most attractive girl in the school, but wants to kill her the most. Unaware of Ikikawa's thoughts, Yamada is just having a good time in the library, eating Narunarunuru candy, mostly for kids. When she realizes she needs water to fully enjoy it, she rushes to fill her small water holder. Unfortunately, she keeps spilling all the water by the time she returns to the library door. Ikikawa notices that she is making a mess and starts wiping up the spilled water from the floor. Yamada notices this and apologizes, saying she intended to clean it up after she was finished. She realizes there are only 3 minutes of recess left and rushes to get water. Ikikawa goes to the lab above himself. He returns with a water glass, but then finds out that Yamada used a bowl instead. She then tastes the candy and feels so happy. Ikikawa has to pretend like he bought glass for himself. As he finished drinking water, she hands him her trash, telling him he can keep it. In the class, Ikikawa thinks about his plan to kill Yamada. While she is struggling with the heat, so her friend Moko helps her fan herself. As Yamada, Moko, and others fan each other, Kobayashi get hit by Yamada and she yells at her. Ikikawa wonders why Yamada eats alone, despite having many friends. He even thinks if she might want to harm him in the library. Some boys notice Yamada sweating heavily, and talks about seeing her undergarments. Ikikawa overhears this and gets frustrated. One classmate, Adachi, tries to peek at Yamada when Ikikawa drops his cutter on the ground, to get Adachi's attention to scare him. His plan works and he leaves the classroom. He saw Yamada's friend, Kobayashi, giving her a piggyback ride. He thinks of Kobayashi as Yamada's boyfriend in his mind, who always take care of her, and notices how Kobayashi never complains, even when carrying Yamada. Later, at the library, Yamada asks him for his hand fan. As she was fanning herself, she notices that it smells quite nice. When she tells Ikikawa to check for himself, he accidentally gets close enough to see her clothes, which are all wet at this point. She gets a call from Moko, saying that Kobayashi is looking for her. She asks Ikikawa to take her seat while she hides under the table. When Kobayashi arrives, she looks angry. Ikikawa says that Yamada is not here. She sits there and he asks her to have some snacks, but she refuses, sharing an incident. When Yamada was at her house and took so long in the bathroom, she checked and found her eating chips in the hall. Ikikawa realizes that's why Yamada is always eating alone. Kobayashi says that Yamada always takes care of her and starts praising her. She comes out on her own when she hears this. Kobayashi already knew that Yamada was hiding under the table, so she used this trick. Now they leave with Yamada carrying her on her back. With the cultural festival approaching, the whole class is busy preparing. Ikikawa's class is in charge of creating a haunted house. Yamada asks him to help with the decorations. He offers advice to Hara but gets distracted by her appearance. As he was trying to have a closer look, Yamada startles him by jumping out to scare him. But Kobayashi comes and takes her with her, saying, "You need more practice for the festival." After Hara finishes the work, she leaves to empty the bucket. Yamada enters and spots a gravestone drawing with her family's last name on it. Ikikawa wonders if Hara wrote it because she might hate Yamada. Adachi grabs him, suspecting that he wrote it. To avoid a clash between the two girls, Ikikawa admits to doing it. Adachi wants to fight him to impress Yamada, but luckily Hara arrives and tells she wrote it. She plans to erase the names. Hara didn't single out Yamada, she used common surnames, which turns out to be true. Ikikawa helps Hara to erase them. Yamada realizes that he protected Hara and apologizes to him, while Kobayashi tells her to come over and practice her haunted house routine. Hara says with the names gone, they just look like blocks of tofu. So, Ikikawa writes his family's name on the gravestone and goes to wash his hands at a stall. He ponders Yamada's apology when she startles him, wondering if she'd be scarier with fake blood. Ikikawa shows her how to make paint look like real blood. She moves her face closer and he puts a dot on it. They share some intimate moments. Then he leaves from there. The cultural festival begins and Ikikawa spots Haruya. He joins Yamada and her friends. Even if Ikikawa has his doubts about Haruya, he knows that Haruya isn't all bad, considering how he helped get his bike back from the river. He starts following them, but ends up losing sight of them. Just when he's thinking of entering a room, Yamada comes from behind. They saw an exhibit about their town, how it was 80 years ago. As they go inside, they notice a map on the ground. Yamada tells him where she lives, and Ikikawa finds out that he lives near her. He asks if he can take a picture, and Yamada takes his phone so they can take a selfie. This confuses him because he wanted to photograph the map. In the next scene, Ikikawa is drawing a hero for his story he's going to write. The heroine he sketches looks somewhat similar to Yamada, and then he sneaks a look at her. Afterwards, Ikikawa goes to the nurse's room because he has a headache. Since he doesn't have a fever, the nurse tells him to rest for an hour. Then he sees Yamada's shoes. He tries to convince himself that they might belong to a boy from another class. But when the nurse leaves, he checks the bed next to him and finds out that Yamada is indeed there, just as he suspected. Yamada wakes up soon after and says she has a stomach ache. When she hears about his headache, she takes out some candies from her pocket and gives him a pain pill that was with them. He sees a cup and realizes Yamada used it earlier. He struggles to take the medicine, but forcefully swallows the pill when Yamada startles him. After she leaves, Ikikawa goes back to his bed and notices that she forgot her t-shirt. He wants to touch it, but tries to stop himself from being curious. Just then, the nurse comes in and sees it. She throws it to Ikikawa and tells him to give it back to her. The smell of the shirt is really nice to him. On his way back to class, he tries to return Yamada's clothes, but she hurries to the nurse's office to secure her candies. Ikikawa returns to class to continue working on his story. Later, the boys in the class come up with the idea to play a perverted game with girls. Although Ikikawa wants to stop them and hates the whole idea, he eventually does nothing. At the same time, Adachi confronts Yamada and tries to ask her a sensual question. Yamada and others give him a cold look, so he changes the subject and walks away. That's all for this part of the story. 500 likes and I'll make second part of this video. I'll read all of your comments, so don't